Good day everyone and welcome to this build and gameplay video for a ranged hybrid sorcerer. This is a spec that has been long overdue a presentation on this channel, I think. I've been talking about Magicka Sorcerer a lot the past patches, but on a hybrid sorcerer I have only hinted at before, for example in the guide for Magicka Sorcerer for this patch. But it can be a decent spec and fun to play. And it is a sorcerer, which is a lot of this channel's content, so I think it's about time that I release something for this as well. With this build, I have tried to make it feel as much as a Magicka sorcerer as I can, but of course you are relying a lot on the stamina side of things for example survivability, as a Magicka sorcerer just purely Magicka cannot hold its own at all. But despite that, it is still a lot of fun to play. It is decently strong, it's nice for open world. I've had a lot of fun for it, for roaming around and for 1vx, but it can also hold its own in a duel every now and then, or in a battleground. I'll play some gameplay on the side here, and I'll also include some gameplay after the video, so you can see how this build plays as well, and I'll try to explain it a little bit during the setup as well. So first, before I start, let me mention that you can also find this build on the website, ESO It's linked in the description, and you can see it on top of the screen as well. On the same website, you will also find another version of a hybrid sorcerer that is more melee and maybe a bit more reliant still on stamina, and that doesn't really feel like Magicka sorcerer. So if you want to try something like that out, you can find the resources for that too. So now for the build itself, a ranged hybrid sorcerer, starting off with the sets. I have on double barred a Mara's Balm, on the back bar I have Wretched Vitality, and on the front bar I have Agility with the Mark and Ring of Majesty Mythic. Starting off with Mara's Balm, this is a set that is ideally double barred. You can also one bar it, but I like to double bar it here. And it is basically going to give you a lot of healing over time, and every now and then a really big burst heal as well. And it is especially strong when you're taking a lot of pressure, such as in solo situations, 1vx, which is what I do, especially on my sorcerer. So this set helps me a lot with that. And generally, sorcerer doesn't have that much healing. Its defense is mostly reliant on roll dodging and kiting. But even with those two things, it's not really enough to hold up in a tough situation. And that's why I feel like you do need some set like this for a build that wants to do 1vx on a sorcerer. So this set, it is still decently strong. I would call it maybe an A tier or maybe even an S tier set, if you will. It also has really good 2 to 4 piece bonuses for survivability. Helps a lot with dealing, for example, with Nightblaze that might otherwise one-shot you. From this set I have 4 pieces on the armor, so that's 4 heavy, and then 1 piece on the jewelry here. For the second set, Wretched Vitality, this is a really good set to get your sustain on point, and as I mentioned before, Sorcerer relies a lot on kiting and roll dodging, and that eats sustain. For 1vx, I feel like I do need something to further boost my sustain with the rather weak survivability that Sorcerer has. And then, since there's not really that many good damage sets out there that compare to the amount of power and sustain that Wretched Vitality gives, I would rather get a sustain set and then push my damage elsewhere, I will go over that in a bit, than trying to get a damage set but then maybe being a bit lackluster on sustain and dying because of that in 1vx. So Wretched Vitality is going to give me basically almost 400 Magicka and stamina regeneration, and its 2 to 4 piece bonuses are really good for that as well, and it's going to cover all of my sustain. And with that, I know I can stay in combat forever. I can chill, I can risk a bit, I can try and damage enemies with the still decent damage that I have, and not having to worry too much about getting out of resources because 5 people jump on me because I have a lot of mobility, and I can keep on sustaining it as well. And then for the front bar set, this is going to give me a bit of a damage boost for starters, is Agility. I will talk a little bit more about that for the skills, but basically this is going to give me about 2k stamina and 200 weapon damage, and that is a nice boost to damage. This is in conjunction with the Mythic here, Mark and Ring of Majesty. That's another 200 weapon damage on the back bar and 300 on the front bar, because on the front bar we have 3 3-piece sets. The first is Mara's Balm, the second is Wretched Vitality, and the third is Agility, so that helps a lot. And then some armor as well, useful. And then on the jewelry I have 3 infused weapon damage enchantments. That also helps to boost my weapon damage, of course. And you can go with some Bloodthirsty to further boost your damage here. I do have one here as well right now. It's a bit of a choice you have to make yourself. If you want to push full on to damage, it's best to go with Bloodthirsty. If you want to have some more healing from Vigor, then it's best to go with Infused. For Sorcerer, your only heal really that scales of weapon damage is Vigor, so that's a good reason for saying actually it's better to go for Bloodthirsty for more damage. But then again, you don't have much healing, so on the other hand, maybe every little extra bit is welcome. This, as I said, is a bit of a choice you'll have to make yourself as well. On the armor, I have full tri-stat glyphs and impenetrable. Ideally on the chest you would go reinforced, but if you have impenetrable it's perfectly fine as well. There's not really a big difference here at all. On the front bar I have a weapon damage enchant with the sharpen trait. On the back bar I have the power trait, simply for more healing from dark conversion, vigor and crit surge, with the escapist's poison, which is a really good defensive poison, better than any enchant you couldn't get on the back bar as well. Then for the skills, I'm going to start off with Streak here, I must have of course, and then Crystal Fragments. Crystal Fragments here is kind of a skill I slot here to feel more like a Masterwork, because ideally on this build you should actually slot Bound Armaments here. And the reason for that is simply because it's a bit more pressure over time, and it's also going to give you more stats, because now on the front bar you will also have Daedric Protection here. That's a lot of extra stamina recovery, that helps a lot. And you also get some maximum stamina, a modifier of 8%. And with the agility here on the front bar, and generally the high stamina pool I have of about 27k, this 8% does count in quite a bit. Gives you a bit of an extra damage boost that is always very welcome in conjunction with the sustained boost. And it's still not that bad of a skill itself. Not great, but not that bad either. So ideally you should go with Bound Armaments here. One more thing to mention here too is that while you have it active, you will benefit from the Expert Summoner passive, which is going to give you 8% more health. So it gives you that on top as well. But if you want to feel like a Masterwork, you go with Crystal Fragments, and that's why I have it. It just feels better for me to play with that. And then for the third skill, this is a spammable. I have Crushing Weapon. I think that's the best spammable here. You do not have the magical sustain to go cast Elemental Weapon or Crushing Shock on this. And Crushing Weapon is a really good spammable, because not only is it just good in terms of gameplay, it also gives you Major Breach, which is a very big debuff on the enemy. The skill itself, I said it's good as a spammable too, because there's a couple nice and neat things with it. For example, if you have casted on an enemy with a light attack and an enemy roll dodges the light attack, you still keep the charge as long as the time lasts, of course, and you can time another light attack right after the enemy's roll dodge ends, and then it will still hit, and you can combine that, for example, with Crystal Fragments or Endless Fury or Bound Armaments. Then I have Camouflaged Hunter. This is going to give me the necessary Major Savagery and Prophecy buff, and also Minor Berserk, and also some spell damage from the Fighter skill line. It's 3%. So that's a nice buff to have as a passive skill. And then lastly I have Endless Fury. Endless Fury is the finisher. This is going to be part of my burst rotation that I will talk about in a little bit. It's not that good as a finisher itself, it's really just a burst skill, and that's how it should be treated. But if you're, for example, in BGs and your enemies are not that strong, it's also really good as a kill stealing ability. On the front bar I have Dawnbreaker of Smiting. This is actually not an ult I use that much. There are some occasions in which I do, but it is mainly there for the spell damage buffs again from Fighters Guild, and that's yet another way how I build my damage, over building it with my 5-piece sets. I use different things here and there, such as this. I will go over the stats in a bit though. And this skill, I do use it sometimes, as I said, but it's really for niche situations. For example, if I'm fighting a Nightblade, then sometimes I will hit the Dawnbreaker while they are in roll dodge or in cloak and surprise them that way. And it goes really nicely in conjunction with a light attack from Power Overload. You can make a really big burst like that. But Power Overload is the main ultimate that I use. I simply toggle it on and off from the back bar and use it that way. Then for the other skills, I have Hurricane. This is a really nice speed boost. This is a really nice speed boost, but it also gives me major resolve, necessary for tankiness, and it deals some physical damage in AoE. The damage itself is not that big, but it does proc Critical Surge a lot, and Critical Surge is then going to give me a bit of steady healing, which is really nice to have. About 4k per second. This is due to the healing modifiers from the CP and powers as a trait on the back bar. On top of that, this is also going to give me Major Brutality and Sorcery, so I get my damage buff this way. Next up I have Vigor. This is my main heal, but it now also gives Minor Resolve. It's quite a strong skill and definitely necessary. Then is my other burst skill, Haunting Curse. Haunting Curse is going to be one of the first skills I cast, and I will try to time the explosion with that with Crystal Fragments. And then Dark Deal is my second heal, or third if you count Critical Surge as well, and is going to give me a lot of sustain as well. Then about the auxiliary stuff such as race, I am an orc. This is a really solid race. It also makes me even faster, and for a stamina sorcerer that's really nice to have. All attributes are into stamina. With Expert Summoner you'll get about 29-ish k health, which is enough. If you are not an orc also has a bit of a health bonus. It is better to maybe put like 10 points into health as well to help balance that out. But generally I like to stack stamina here because it simply gives me a lot of damage, especially when I benefit from bound armaments as well. You can see the stats here too while I'm at it. Buffed up, it is simply with crit surge here. Then I have 5.5k weapon damage. It goes up a bit higher to almost 6k when the enchant procs as well. And that's a good amount of weapon damage. It's strong, especially when your overload is up too. That is enough weapon damage to take care of most people. So even though I'm running 5-piece sets that are heavily focused on sustain and survivability, I do still get a lot of damage. I will talk about an alternative setup with the 5-piece sets in a bit though, in case you want to push it higher. The spell penetration, unbuffed it is 5k, buffed up it will be about 10k. Not great, not terrible. And then the spell resistances and critical resistance you can see here as well. As the Mundus, I have the Warrior. This is going to give me a bit of weapon damage and healing. If you want to go for purely damage, then it's better to go with the Lover Mundus. And then for the Vampire Stage 3, this is always a must-have, so make sure to have that. And Smoked Bear Haunch, or Zorka Smoked Bear Haunch is the full name, is the food that I use for getting me health and extra sustain. Then for the champion points, in the blue tree I have Weapons Expert, Focus Mending, Deadly Aim and Mastered Arms. Deadly Aim and Mastered Arms is going to buff all your damage, except I think Mastered Arms is not buffing bound armament, so that's one thing to keep in mind, but generally these two CPs are important to have. Focus Mending simply to help the healing further from Critical Surge, Mars Balm and everything else. And then Weapons Expert I use because a big burst of damage on Sorcerer comes from having Overload. This is often when you have a tanky enemy, the only way you're going to get kills, no matter how much you push into damage. Overload is a big part of that. So I built into that fully by giving it a large damage modifier of 20%, and that way I do get a lot of extra damage in all my enemies. So that's a nice CP here. And then for the red tree I have Sustained by Suffering, Pain's Refuge, Rejuvenation and Survival Instincts. Rejuvenation is an optional one here. You can stop whatever you want here. Celerity if you even want more mobility, or a tanky CP such as Fortified here, which gives you about 1800 armor. Or alternatively Relentlessness, which is going to give you major protection for a short time after being stunned or feared. So those are your options here. But yeah, that's it for the build. With the gameplay here and some gameplay afterwards, you should be able to see how it's played as well. It is right now the nicest way, the most fun way for me to play Magic Sorcerer, and it definitely brought some fun back for me into the game, because it feels a lot like a Magic Sorcerer, even though there is things that are off. I mean, it's with a bow back bar. I'm not using any bow skills. The bow is just there for the major expedition. To get to the point though, despite having a bow on the back bar, this build has been a lot of fun. I hope I will be able to play Magic again properly someday, but in the meantime, this is worth a try, and I definitely recommend it. Again, you can find it written down on the website as well. I will list some more gameplay after this, and I wish you a good day. See you in the next video. Bye.